welcome back to another episode of I'll Allow It Nevada, your go-to podcast for insightful glimpses into the Nevada judiciary. I'm your host, Seth Beasley, representing the Supreme Court of Nevada Administrative Office of the Courts. In today's episode, we're taking a look at treatment courts from a perspective we don't always hear, that of the treatment providers who work directly with participants. These providers are essential partners in helping treatment courts fulfill their mission of promoting accountability, rehabilitation, and long-term recovery. Joining me is Amy Lewis from Quest Counseling in Reno. Amy brings years of experience working with individuals in recovery and collaborating with courts to support their success. Together, we'll talk about what makes these partnerships work, the challenges providers face, and the opportunities of strengthening collaborations even further. Amy, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Can you start by describing the role that treatment providers play in supporting treatment courts?
I feel like treatment providers do play a very critical role with the treatment courts. We're there to support rehabilitation. We address substance use, mental health issues, which typically are underlying issues for criminal behavior oftentimes. We ensure that the participants are receiving the appropriate services they need and collaborating with our court teams to where they have a better understanding of addiction and recovery.
Okay. So how do providers such as yourself first become connected with Nevada's treatment courts, and why is that collaboration important?
So we become connected typically through contracts.
Okay.
So either the specialty courts, treatment courts, they will either contact us, the treatment provider, or we oftentimes contact them. So we will send an email out describing the services that we offer at our agency and see if people want to contract that way, or we just reach out to let them know what services we have. Quest is a CCBHC, which is a certified community behavioral health clinic.
Okay.
So we offer a lot of substance use and mental health services. We have 24/7 crisis intervention, things like that. So that's how we become connected that way. And then what was the next part of your question? Oh, why is the collaboration important? Yep. It's important because it helps to ensure that individuals that are in the criminal justice system do receive the appropriate treatment that they need. Like I said, usually substance use and mental health, there's some underlying issues with criminal behavior.
Right. So from the provider's side, Quest, for example, works with all sorts of people, not just people involved with the treatment courts. So what makes working with treatment court participants different than working with other client populations?
It's definitely a very different role as a clinician to work with justice-involved clients. When it comes to treatment, typically treatment and therapy, people come to us. They're seeking help themselves. They want to work on things themselves. So that's typical how therapy is supposed to work.
Right.
So when we have participants being referred to us by the justice system, they're not always excited to see me when they first come to treatment because they have to come to treatment as a part of their program.
Right. They're not coming there voluntarily.
Most of the time, that is correct. So I think as a clinician, it is very different because confidentiality is a huge piece in that. Everything that my clients talk about, anybody seeking therapy, that is always confidential. So there's this fine line in my role working with treatment courts that I have to disclose certain things. And so that's very, very different from typical anybody else coming to treatment on their own. There's the confidentiality part. There's also the team-based approach. Yes, it's individual treatment that I'm doing, but I'm also working with a team to work with this one in particular client.
Okay, that's interesting. Not something I actually would have thought about, is that confidentiality piece.
Yes.
That's really interesting and a big difference, actually.
Yes. And it's such a fine line with my clients because that's how I build rapport.
Right.
with my clients. That's how my clients are able to trust me, knowing that they're safe in the room. They can tell me anything. So I really have to, any clinician, I think, working with any type of justice involved client, it's a hard balance. It's a hard balance because I really don't want to disclose anything, but there are certain things that is important and necessary to disclose to the team.
Right. In the context of treatment courts, how and why are clients referred to a provider, and what does that process typically look like for the provider?
How and why they're referred. They're referred basically because there was some sort of, I guess you could say, crime that was committed, breaking of the law, and there's suspected to be some sort of a substance use issue. Then the court coordinators will typically send an email, some sort of a referral directly over to us with a new participant, and then we'll reach out to the participant, and we will then do the referral process. Basically, we'll do an assessment, an evaluation that will determine a diagnosis, if there is one, mental health or substance use diagnosis, and then we'll determine the level of care through that assessment. And at that point, we'll give that assessment, that completed document, back to the staff that referred them, and then they will get them into treatment based off of that recommendation from the evaluation.
So the court, if they believe someone might have an underlying issue contributing to criminal behavior, they will refer them to you.
Right.
And then from there, you guys kind of will assess what the situation is and come up with a plan.
Yes, pretty much. Okay. Sometimes the courts, there have been different courts that they have their own, they contract with their own evaluator.
Okay.
So when they refer a client over to us, it'll come along with an evaluation that was already done that recommends outpatient treatment, which is what Quest is. We're an outpatient treatment facility. And then we'll just get all the paperwork started with the client and then get them scheduled to start treatment. So it can look different ways depending on if there's contracts in place, if they're just, the clients are choosing from multiple different agencies where they want to go and they choose us. So, but either way, there has to be an assessment or assessment evaluation. It's the same thing. There has to be an evaluation done and completed before any client, whether they're justice involved or not. Anybody has to have that done before they can start treatment.
So I know we kind of touched on this already a little bit, but what are some of the unique challenges that participants face when treatment is tied to court involvement, and how do providers address those challenges?
That's a great question. There are a lot of unique challenges, therapeutic challenges, I think, that are very different from voluntary treatment, people coming in on their own. The biggest one, I think, is the association, my clients associating me with court.
Right, like the penal system.
Yes, the judicial system, the court system, police, all of that. Mm-hmm. Because they go to court, they get sentenced, they're in drug court or whatever court it may be, and then they're told, okay, now you have to go here and start your treatment, contact this person. So they really do, then they show up, not always happy.
Right.
And then I have to tell them all these other requirements that they have to do for the treatment part, but they associate me with their court program,
right? Because
treatment is a part of their court program. So I'm constantly, especially in those first few sessions that I meet with my clients, I'm constantly reminding them that I do not work for the court system. We're contracted. I'm just here to do the treatment. I'm just here to help you. How can I help you get through your program? And confidentiality, I'm always going to be going back to confidentiality to remind them over and over, everything we talk about in here is confidential. So I think it takes a lot. There are a lot of challenges in that. It takes time for me personally to build that rapport and that trust so they can get to a point to where they do trust that, okay, I see you in court all the time. You're connected to them, but you don't work for them. So it is separate. So it can be very blurry, I think, for participants at first. And also, treatment is done differently a little bit for court clients because oftentimes the courts will have, the specialty court programs will have in their phases. So in this phase, you have to do an individual session and this many groups. So I really have to, I guess, compromise. Treatment is kind of a compromise because courts have how much treatment they want the participants to do. And then me as a clinician trying to do individualized treatment, which is best practice. We have to find that compromise with our justice involved participants.
So it sounds like it takes, as we established before, they're usually not coming there of their free will. So it takes extra time to kind of build that rapport with these clients and that trust that it's kind of fundamental to treatment, apart from these other challenges you mentioned. Going back, you mentioned that they see you in court. I was curious about that. So you are there during court?
Some of my courts.
Okay.
So some of my courts, I'm only in staffing. So which is right before court starts, the whole team gets together and we staff all the cases and on the docket. I have another court that I'm in where, and I have in the past, that I'm no longer in some of these contracted with these treatment courts at this time, but another one of my courts, I'm in staffing and I'm there as well in the court hearing with the participants when they come. So I'll be there all the way through. So it basically depends on, I think, the judge, how they want to do their court, whether or not I stay in those court hearings. Sometimes I'm not in the court hearings, but sometimes if there's an issue going on with a client and there's a big issue going on and they really want to hear the treatment side of things, I can come into court and advocate on behalf of my client if need be.
Okay, cool. All right. So treatment courts, they balance accountability with rehabilitation. So from the provider perspective, how does treatment philosophy align with that model?
So the core treatment philosophy is to really work towards behavioral changes. That's a big piece of it. Personal accountability, recovery, all of those things. So it does definitely align with that idea of accountability and rehabilitation, which is the court's perspective, but also in treatment. Outside of the judicial system, when we're working on recovery and sobriety, that core foundation has to start with honesty, being honest with yourself, taking accountability for your own actions, your own choices, what really got you here to this place. So all of those things very much align. And rehabilitation, I think the goal for our treatment courts is to reduce recidivism. Right. And that's no different in just overall recovery.
So quite aligned.
Yes. Very much so, I think.
So what does a person-centered, individualized approach look like in the context of treatment court participants?
Person-centered, individualized treatment is how treatment is done. And there's a very fine line, I think, with individualized treatment when you're working with treatment court participants, because the courts, you have to satisfy courts and their policies and their phases, their treatment requirements, right? And I also need to have person-centered, individualized treatment for my clients, because everybody's story, what got them here to this point, everybody's story is very unique and different to their own self. And it's never one size fits all. And that's where the compromise and the balance comes in, working with these programs, because these programs are a set amount of time, give or take, right? A year, 18 months, sometimes 3 years. We've got some court programs that are 3 years long. So that's a long time to
That's the long haul.
have a client with me every week. But I think being able to individualize the treatment is crucial. And I have to put it out there that all of the courts and the judges and the court teams that I have worked with over the past decade, longer than that really, have been amazing. They're really easy to work with, really understanding. I can always, if I have to kind of individualize treatment, they're always willing to work with treatment, I find. So that piece is really good. But there is that balance. So how I do it, if I have contracts with a particular court, like drug court, if we have a contract with drug court, I will then create an entire program at my agency for that court.
Okay.
So I will typically do the treatment according to the phases. So the other part of it too, it is in a way good for the clients, because if all of the participants know in phase one, we have to do, this many groups. If it's different and they're sitting in group together, I oftentimes see, well, why do you have to do this? And I don't have to do this. And we're in the same phase, or I started before you. Or so it eliminates having some structure to the treatment, also eliminates those types of things. So there's a balance.
Interesting. That's not something I would have thought about, that especially when they're in group sessions like that, how that structure could be actually helpful.
Right. The fairness.
Right.
It's not fair. And we can't talk about other clients' programs, right? We can't do that. So having some structure to it, building a program for their court program, I think is really important, and it benefits the participants.
So in your experience, what kinds of changes or progress shows that treatment is working in this setting?
So I think progress can be identified in a lot of different ways. For one, compliance. We can see progress with our participants by their compliance, by their negative drug screens. On the treatment side, inside the room, the work that they're doing. Really, that's how I see progress in my clients, is when they come in the room, what they bring in the room to work on privately with
how
me.
They engage in the process.
Yes.
Kind of? Okay.
Yes, because anybody can show up to treatment that is court ordered to show up to treatment. Anybody can sit in my office for an hour a week and keep it surface level about the weather or whatever, which isn't really doing work, but they're showing up.
Okay.
But I think progress really shows in the participants themselves. How have they changed throughout the duration of their program? What goals, treatment plan goals, have they accomplished, right? Getting a job, paying their fees, creating stability and housing for themselves and for their family. That is, and maintaining sobriety and really using all the tools that they're learning in treatment to maintain their sobriety. That is how that's the evidence that I see in my clients, that change is happening.
The kind of things you pick up with your interactions and your sessions with them.
Yes.
And how they're kind of embracing the process. Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode of I'll Allow It Nevada. We're always striving to bring you valuable insights and education, not just for judicial officers, but for anyone interested in the Nevada judiciary. If you find our content helpful or intriguing, please share your experience with your friends, family, and colleagues. Your support helps us reach a broader audience and ensures that more people can benefit from our discussions. Thank you for listening and supporting I'll Allow It Nevada. From your perspective, what elements of treatment courts make them effective at reducing recidivism and supporting long-term recovery?
I think, for one, the team approach with treatment courts, just combining those behavioral health services with judicial oversight, all of that team approach, I think, is really effective for the participants, for the clients. Incentives, I think when courts use incentives by, recognizing progress really, and incentives work. It really does. That's really helpful. And also connecting clients to community resources. The courts do a really good job at providing resources for their participants. And that all of those things all together, I think is a part of the whole process in trying to reduce recidivism, the whole treatment, all of those combined.
And to your point on incentives, one of the great privileges of this job was sitting in on a specialty court graduation.
Oh, yes.
And it was a really impactful moment. I mean, to see the amount of pride these participants had going through the process and being recognized by not just the judicial officer, but with all the community stakeholders that worked with them to get to that point.
Yes, it's powerful, isn't it?
It really is.
Yes. And those clients work so hard. That's the other piece. There's so much work behind the scenes in therapy, private in therapy, that I don't talk on, I don't speak on because of confidentiality.
Right.
So those moments when clients graduate a program like that, not everybody gets to that point. Not everybody graduates. And so when somebody does, we know that it takes a lot of work to get to that point. And I really appreciate how the court programs really recognize the graduations. There's different courts that do different things for graduation. It's really special and it means so much to the participants. Sometimes we have clients that haven't even, maybe graduated high school or, haven't, accomplished some of the goals that they thought at one point in their life they would have. So to complete something that's not easy like this, sobriety being the biggest one, is should be recognized.
Agreed. And yeah, it's evident how impactful it is and how much it means to them. And yeah, that was a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah. I'm glad you got to experience that.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right. So kind of along that line, do you have a story or an example that highlights the impact of treatment courts and what they can do in someone's life? And I know we kind of touched on that a little bit just now with the graduation, but anything else you can think of?
There's so many stories that I could share, so many individual clients of mine that have been successful because of programs like this. Treatment courts, I think, they're life-changing. If a client is ready, that's what it comes down to. If a client wants the help and is ready to stop using and is ready to change their life, these programs are life-changing for them. And I have a lot of clients that say that to me. If I didn't get in trouble, most of my clients view their charge, the incident that occurred, to get them arrested and get them in these programs. A lot of my clients, by the time they're ready to graduate, they look at these things as a blessing in disguise, which is I do too. But to hear them say that, I had a client recently say that getting in trouble was both the worst thing and the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And he just graduated a program a couple weeks ago. So
I love that sentiment. It's a blessing in disguise. It kind of helped get them on the right path. And if that's what it took, then they take it for what it is, and they're happy that they ended up where they are.
Right. And I think the other thing that's really important for people outside of the treatment world to understand is it's very, very difficult to stop using on your own. If it were easy, I would not have a job, right?
Right.
It's very difficult. And most of the time people cannot do it on their own because they're so far along in their addiction and so incredibly addicted, right? These substances are powerful substances. And oftentimes they don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. They don't know what first move to make. So getting in trouble, I don't wish that on anybody, but
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Getting in trouble is a blessing in disguise to get them into these programs, where these programs are full of so many community resources that
That they
wrap
otherwise would
around.
not have
Yes.
had. They just, like you said, it's hard to do on your own to
Yes.
get to overcome something like that. But with the help and the resources that they're getting through this
Yes.
treatment.
Exactly. And there's so many resources. Once they get to me, I don't just treat substance use. That's where we start. But then over time, we'll start to identify if there's underlying trauma. And so at that point, they'll still continue to see me, but I'll refer them in my agency to work on trauma therapy. We connect them to peer recovery support that we have, case management, TCM service. We've got just so many services in-house that we really identify need for our clients. And if we don't have it in our own agency, we make referrals as well to treat all aspects of our participants.
Making sure everything's getting treated and addressed.
Yes, 100%.
So looking ahead, what opportunities do you see for strengthening the way treatment providers and courts work together to support participants?
I think continuing to really strengthen relationships between courts and community resources. I think that that's really important. Trainings are really important. I'm sure you're aware every other year there's a state training. Why am I drawing a blank? They alternate between Las Vegas, specialty courts training. It's for the state. And then they do one nationally, which is the All Rise. Okay. And I think those are wonderful, wonderful opportunities for the judicial team, for court staff to be involved in those trainings, because it's constantly changing and shifting. Treatment is, and court programs are too. And so I think those are great opportunities for myself as a treatment provider to go and sit in these different types of national and state trainings, because I can learn the other side of things as well.
Right.
I know how treatment works, but to really learn about how the whole judicial system works, how all of these specialty court programs work, what probation's role is in these programs is really helpful to me too, because I'm not the expert in those areas.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Just like an increased understanding of kind of each
other's roles.
Right.
Yeah. Because we all have a role to play on these teams, but I think it's really helpful for me, not only for them to understand treatment, right? That's my job, but it's helpful for me to understand how the other side works too.
Right.
I don't have a law degree. I don't work in the legal system. So it's helpful for me and for all of us to be trained and educated on each other's roles so we can best serve our participants.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah.
Kind of wrapping up the discussion a little bit, is there anything judges, court staff, or members of the judiciary could understand better about the provider side of treatment courts?
That's a really great question. And what comes to mind first is talking about relapse. I think that relapse is not necessarily a sign of noncompliance. Usually never. Sometimes it is, but usually never. And I look at relapse with my participants as, okay, what happened? Okay. What is it that we still need to work on that hasn't been worked on? Or what is going on currently in your life that you have the inability to cope with in a healthy way? Stress, right? You have to remember these court programs, it's a lot of work for these participants. Right. They have a lot on their plate in these programs.
On top of whatever else is going on in their lives.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I think that's a key component when participants do relapse. That's how I look at it. Let me get you in here so we can really work on what happened. That's how I look at relapse. And I think a lot of the court people that I've worked with do look at it that way. But there are some times that, others view it as breaking a rule.
A failure.
Yeah, which they have broken a rule, sure. But there's something deeper going on always when it comes to that. And also, I think, again, here I go back to confidentiality. I think that's a really big one, that a good reminder for the court team to always remember when it comes to treatment providers, that just because I don't say much of anything doesn't mean that my client's not doing work. Doesn't mean that things aren't happening, because it is such a fine line that I value confidentiality for my participants, and I will protect it as much as I possibly can. And I won't speak on anything unless I absolutely have to. So I think that's a big piece for judges and court staff to really remember, that they're not going to, and a lot of judges are good with that. They expect not to know everything. And there's others that want to know.
Yeah. I think that is a good reminder. I mean, just stressing how important that confidentiality is in building the rapport, and that which is fundamental to the client's success.
It's that's a great word, fundamental to their success. That is exactly what it comes down to. If a client doesn't feel safe just opening up in their session with me about anything that they want to, that they need to, their deepest, darkest secrets, if they don't feel safe and trust that they can do that, they're not going to get the treatment that they should get, the treatment that they deserve to get. They're not going to get that if they don't feel safe. So that's truly why confidentiality is so critical in these programs.
Okay. So lastly, but certainly not least, what should the public know about the role of treatment in the justice system?
I think that reducing recidivism, we spoke a little bit about that.
Right.
I think that it's important for the public to know what these treatment courts are. The goal is to reduce recidivism, therefore protecting the public, making sure that the public is safe. How are we doing that? I'm of the belief that when it comes to addiction and recovery, prison or jail, it's not going to happen there. And if we have participants where rehabilitation is absolutely possible, why wouldn't we do that? Right? It just makes sense to, monitor these participants in a court program and also help them make changes to where everybody in the community feels safe.
And then just addressing those underlying causes that are leading to this criminal activity, that whatever got them into that situation.
Yes. And I will say, I've been in treatment courts for over a decade throughout my career. And the majority of the time, I would say probably 90% of the time, the participants that I work with in these programs, they're not criminals. They have substance use issues. They have mental health issues. Most of my clients are committing crimes so that they can feed their addiction. They can support their addiction.
Right.
If they were sober, and we have these conversations in session, if they were sober, they would have never committed crime to begin with.
Right.
Absolutely not. I'm not a criminal. And that's true for the majority of these participants. There are a few that admittedly will say it doesn't matter if I'm using or not, I'm a criminal. But I think that's more rare for these types of people in these programs.
Typically, the addiction is the crime is a symptom of the addiction. 100%,
yes. So, and those are all things that, with the appropriate resources, that can be, these people can get help. There's help out there.
All right. Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot,
Yes.
and I know, and I know that my audience will get a lot from this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about this role and treatment courts, and I truly believe in them. And I appreciate so much all of these programs that are out there to help people. And the judges, I've worked with so many, and I really truly appreciate what they're doing, these court teams. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. A heartfelt appreciation to our guest and to everyone who has tuned into this podcast. Before we wrap up, here are a couple of quick important reminders. For continuing legal education credit, be sure to complete a certificate of attendance and email it to jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov. If you have any questions, topic suggestions, or comments, we welcome your input. You can email us at jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov or submit your topic ideas to the topic suggestion form linked in the episode description. We value and look forward to hearing from our listeners. Stay tuned for more episodes of I'll Allow It Nevada. This is Seth Easley signing off. Take care, Nevada.